On this day in history, April 2nd, most people look at the calendar and see just another day. But history never sees it that way. Behind every date are discoveries, decisions, conflicts, and moments that quietly reshape the world. April 2nd is one of those dates. Across centuries, this single day has witnessed exploration that expanded the map of the world. It has marked the birth of powerful financial systems. It has seen nations step into global war. It has triggered international conflicts. And it has marked the passing of influential leaders whose voices shaped millions of lives. But before we go further, take a moment. Think about how many events in history began with a single decision made on a single day. One ship sailing into unknown waters. One law passed in a government chamber. One speech that changed the direction of a nation. If you enjoy discovering moments like these, take a second to like the video and subscribe. Because every day in history hides stories most people have never heard. Now let's go back more than 500 years. The early 16th century was an age of exploration. European powers were competing to expand their influence across the oceans. Maps were incomplete. Entire continents remained mysterious to European explorers. Ships left the ports of Spain and Portugal, crossing vast and dangerous seas. The risks were enormous. Storms could destroy ships. Navigation errors could leave crews lost in open ocean. Disease often spread during long voyages. Yet explorers kept sailing forward, driven by ambition, driven by curiosity, driven by the promise of discovery. On April 2nd, 1513, a Spanish explorer reached the coastline of a land Europeans had not yet formally claimed. That explorer was Juan Ponce de León. Dense forests stretched along the shoreline. The land appeared rich with possibility. Ponce de León named the region Florida. The name was inspired by the Spanish Easter season known as Pascua Florida, often translated as the Festival of Flowers. For Spain, this moment represented opportunity. Claiming land meant expanding influence in the New World. But exploration always carried consequences. The arrival of Europeans would forever change the lives of indigenous peoples already living on that land. Cultures would collide. Trade networks would expand. Conflicts would arise. And centuries later, the land first seen on that April morning would become one of the most populated regions of the United States. Think about that for a moment. A single landing by an explorer would eventually influence millions of lives. History often begins with moments that seem small at the time. If you find stories like this fascinating, comment below with the country you're watching from. It's incredible to see how people from all over the world connect through history. Centuries passed. Empires expanded. Colonies grew into nations. And by the late 18th century, a new country had emerged in North America. The United States had recently won independence from British rule. But independence created new challenges. The young nation needed stable systems to survive. One of the most important problems involved money. At the time, different coins circulated across the states. Foreign currencies were common. Local tokens were used in trade. Economic transactions were confusing and inconsistent. Without a unified monetary system, national growth would remain unstable. So lawmakers acted. On April 2nd, 1792, Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1792. This law established the United States Mint. For the first time, the country would produce official coins under federal authority. The act also formally introduced the United States dollar. At that moment, it was simply a practical solution to stabilize a young economy. But history had much bigger plans. Over the next 2 centuries, the dollar would become one of the most influential currencies on Earth. International trade would rely on it. Global markets would measure value against it. From a single law passed on April 2nd emerged a financial system that would shape the global economy. That is the power of history. One decision, one moment, one day, and the effects can echo for centuries. If you enjoy learning these hidden turning points, hit the like button. It helps more people discover these incredible stories from history. But April 2nd would not only shape exploration and economics. More than a century later, it would mark a moment that changed the course of global war. The year was 1917. Europe had been locked in the devastating conflict known as World War I. For nearly 3 years, the war had consumed entire nations. Trenches stretched across the landscapes of France and Belgium. Industrial warfare introduced terrifying new weapons: machine guns, heavy artillery, poison gas. Entire regions became fields of destruction. Millions had already lost their lives. At the beginning of the war, the United States remained neutral. Many Americans believed the conflict was a distant European struggle, but events began to change that perspective. German submarine warfare threatened shipping routes. Civilian vessels crossing the Atlantic Ocean were attacked. Diplomatic tensions escalated. Then came a defining moment. On April 2, 1917, the President of the United States addressed Congress. That president was Woodrow Wilson. In a historic speech, Wilson asked Congress to declare war against Germany. He argued that the world had reached a moment when neutrality was no longer possible. Wilson framed the conflict as a struggle to defend democracy and international stability. Within days, Congress approved the declaration. The United States entered the First World War. The impact was enormous. American troops began preparing for deployment to Europe. Factories expanded production of military equipment. Fresh soldiers and resources strengthened the Allied forces. Within a year, American troops were fighting on European battlefields. Their arrival helped shift the balance of the war. In 1918, the conflict finally ended. The decision made on April 2nd helped shape the outcome of one of the deadliest wars in history. And it transformed the United States into a major global power. But history was not finished with April 2nd. Decades later, this same date would trigger another international crisis. The year was 1982. Far in the South Atlantic Ocean lay a remote group of islands known as the Falkland Islands. For over a century, the islands had been governed by the United Kingdom, but the government of Argentina claimed that the islands belonged to them. The dispute lasted for decades. Then, on April 2nd, 1982, Argentine military forces invaded the islands. Within hours, the small British garrison stationed there was overwhelmed. The Argentine flag was raised. The world suddenly focused on these distant islands. The British government, led by Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, responded immediately. A large naval task force was sent thousands of miles across the Atlantic Ocean. The conflict that followed became known as the Falklands War. For 74 days, battles occurred on land, at sea, and in the air. Warships clashed in icy southern waters. Aircraft carried out dangerous missions. Soldiers fought across rugged and freezing terrain. More than 900 lives were lost. In June 1982, British forces regained control of the islands. The war ended, but its political consequences lasted for years. Leadership in both countries changed. National identities were reshaped. And once again, April 2nd became a turning point in history. But this date is remembered not only for exploration and conflict. It is also connected to one of the most influential religious leaders of modern times. On April 2nd, 2005, Pope John Paul II passed away in Vatican City. He had served as leader of the Catholic Church for more than 26 years. During that time, he traveled across the world, speaking to millions. He visited more than 100 countries. He encouraged dialogue between cultures and faiths. He spoke against oppression and injustice. Many historians believe his leadership helped inspire political change in Eastern Europe during the final years of the Cold War. When news of his death spread, millions gathered to mourn. Pilgrims filled the streets surrounding St. Peter's Square. World leaders attended his funeral. It became one of the largest international gatherings ever recorded. His legacy continues to influence religious communities and global conversations today. When we look at April 2nd across centuries, a pattern becomes clear. This single day has witnessed exploration. It has created financial systems. It has influenced world wars. It has sparked territorial conflict. It has marked the passing of global leaders. No single day in history is ordinary. Every date carries decisions that ripple through generations. A voyage across an ocean. A law passed by a young nation. A speech that changed the direction of a war. A military invasion of distant islands. A life that influenced millions. History moves forward through moments like these. And every date on the calendar holds stories waiting to be discovered. If you enjoy uncovering these hidden chapters of history, make sure to subscribe. Because every single day has a story. On this day, explorers expanded the known world. On this day, a currency system was born. On this day, a nation stepped into global war. On this day, distant islands became the center of international conflict. On this day, a spiritual leader left a legacy remembered across the world. And through those moments, history moved forward. If you want to know what happened every day in history, subscribe.